Good evening, welcome to MOTS presents MOTS Ado About Nothing.
MOTS Ado About Nothing. MOTS Ado About Nothing.
Where we apply the revolutionary MOTS scale to classic and contemporary literature.
MOTS Ado About Nothing. MOTS Ado About Nothing.
This podcast contains mature content, spoilers, language. You have been warned.
Hello, welcome back to MOTS Ado About Nothing. I, of course, remain Scott Thurlow. Tonight, I'm joined by Rich Perry.
How you doing?
J. Ian Manzer.
Hello.
And Stephen Amosi.
Howdy, folks.
And tonight, we're discussing a pick that is my choice. It is called The Tunnel Under the World by Frederik Pohl. Just quick backstory. I got this randomly out of a list of famous to moderately known sci-fi short stories, although I never read it. So I don't think any of us have.
No.
So we're going to discuss it. And I think E will give us a logline, perhaps tell us what it may be about.
Oh, so, wow, I'm sorry.
Just a logline.
The logline is, in honor of its 1940s style, we're doing, sorry, Breckhart, it's Tiny Robot Town.
Yeah, if you get that, it fits pretty well. And so, as we normally do on MOTS Ado short stories, we're going to combine intro, body, and conclusion into one sort of conglomerate question and give our total score at the end. And for that, Rich will start us off.
All right, so we have Burkhart start off noticing that weird stuff is going on around town. Everything's a little slightly off.
Uncanny, if
Weird
you will.
advertising-based stuff.
Yeah, weird advertising-based stuff.
Uncanny advertising is what I have.
So, like, after a particularly weird June 15th, he goes to sleep and then wakes up to find out that it's still June 15th. After running into one of his acquaintances, who reveals to him that he's stumbled onto a conspiracy that might involve Martians or Russians. They can't decide yet.
Or Russian Martians.
Yeah.
Or Russian Martians.
Some combination thereof that they suspect.
They find a tunnel that leads to the chemical plant in the center of town, about a few miles away. And he finds out that they are robots that are pretty much being having all of these
guinea pigs.
Yeah, guinea pigs that have these advertisements tested on them to figure out the best way to peddle this to the populace.
To the actual real populace.
So after trying to escape and finding out that he literally cannot because there's nothing to go to.
If that wasn't enough of a twist.
Yeah.
There are three, let's say 2.5 quick twists at the very end. One being that, go on, Rich, what's the other one?
The other one being that he's a robot. Not only is he a robot, he's in a tiny town.
An ant farm for robots.
Yeah, he's basically
being kept up by this juggernaut of advertisement. And then wakes up the next day on June 15th and just goes about his life.
Starts it all over again.
Toy Train Town is what I like to think of it as.
Yeah. I mean,
all I can picture is like the guy like putting on like a conductor hat as he works on these.
This one made me think of a lot of like sort of like influences, like Philip K. Dick is one, Twilight Zone would be another, like things like that.
Yeah.
But overall, what'd you guys think of it?
I actually, so I'm going to say this. I wasn't surprised by the robot twist, and I think that the tiny town twist is basically a
superfluous,
pointless twist.
Yeah.
However, I did enjoy reading the story. I thought it was pretty good, pretty well done, well written, and it was just a fun little half an hour, 45-minute read. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Goody.
So, I started off, I really like the uncanny effect that the author does for the first, I guess, 2/3 of this work.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I felt that I was... I hate it when I outsmarted the protagonist, when I figured out where the plot's going long before he does. In this case, I felt like I was gaining knowledge along with the protagonist and said it pretty well. And then the ending were so many twists that M. Night Shyamalan would be embarrassed by the...
Or he should give this story credit for all the things he tries to pull.
Hey, we don't know. He might have used this. This might have been like what set him on his path.
Possibly, true.
I believe Robot Chicken did a joke on M. Night Shyamalan, like, what a twist!
Yeah.
And I was thinking that, like, every other page, it would be a shocking reveal over what's actually going on here. And so,
actually, I think it was kind of like set up with a... Well, not really set up, but like shown with everybody. Every time there was a twist shown, somebody was standing with their mouth agape.
Yeah.
It's like, ah, like a soap opera where like the camera zooms in real quick. And, like,
Do you like the eyeglasses? Like, my God. When I twist. Sure. Like, I get it. I get that.
You were dead all along, and you're a robot, and you're on a tabletop like miniature town. It became over. Like they overdid the twists in this.
I somewhat agree. Actually, not somewhat. I largely agree. I like the uncanny feel it had throughout, and like sort of like the kept you guessing a little bit here and there. But I think it is weakened at the end. Like there is no need for 3 twists in the span of like 3 pages. Yeah, really. Even though I normally like that kind of thing, and the last paragraph is almost like I have no mouth and I must scream kind of thing. Like I came up with I have no mouth and I have to buy an ice cream. Right, but like I agree with you guys though that it feels unnecessary because of that.
You just brought up a good point. Like, what do they do when they buy all of this stuff? Like, do they just like keep adding to the town where they have?
I think
they
keep
running
like
a simulation until
so
they find the best.
I think the idea is that like ad companies pay them to run these simulations, and then they'll be like, all right, we'll run this for this amount of time, and then take one away, add a new one.
Now he gave it. He's like, we run like certain ad campaigns, and whatever one works the best, that's what they do in real life. And then they come like we run other ones.
It's like every day, this poor man's going home and like trying to figure out where he's going to find this money to buy this new thing. Just like,
no, it's again, it's sort of like I got tinges of like Westworld or like maybe Black Mirror, but either way, I think for the conglomerate,
brought another freezer again, honey.
Great. Then they just reset the whole town, really, like Westworld. Like I said,
I was going to say that I would probably have given this a 3. I'm probably going to give it a 2.
Yeah,
I would probably have given it a 3 if they didn't do the last tiny town twist.
Sure. That's right. It's 1 twist too many. I agree, and I think that's why I also will give it a 2, specifically for that very fact.
There's,
but there's something to be said for like trying to reach and like trying to get to that.
I get it. Perhaps it was
just didn't quite work.
Perhaps it was more effective. All I'm saying is at the time, but now the distance of that I think lessens it.
I read an interesting article many years ago about the suspension of disbelief for the audience, and that you can only have so many twists that the audience will buy into.
Exactly.
And this one, I think, not only went 1 too far, it went maybe
1.5,
2.
2.2.
It's kind of like stop digging. You've already struck oil. Like I was already invested in the ending. Like, oh my god, what a twist!
Oddly enough, for a story about advertising, they oversold it. So
you should have let off with that. That's a perfect synopsis. At least
so if it turns out to be June 7th again tomorrow, they're going to come out with a better story.
Yeah, exactly.
Just going to shave off 1 or 2 of those twists.
I would say 1 too far in terms of that for me. I would say 1 too far. The robot twist, while not completely surprising, was still a good one. And if they had just if Frederik Pohl, I believe is his name. Yes. If you don't mind me using your first name, Frederick.
Freddie, listen up.
If Freddie had just stopped there, it would have been fine.
Sure.
But I think it was like, I don't need this extra. Like, this just seems like you're trying to make this longer.
I think even then was too much, but then like after he gives that whole speech, like, oh, see your face, finding out you're in a tiny town. As he reaches out towards him to reset him.
Sure. So I agree. I think I'm going to give it a 2 for intro body conclusion overall. Specifically, the conclusion is the weakest because of that very thing.
Yeah.
Same.
2s all around, I think.
Yep. Looks like it. And that'll bring us to themes with E.
Ooh. Well, I don't know. There's definitely a marketing discussion here.
A parody of consumerism, I think, was touted as.
Exactly.
Even.
Although I don't necessarily know what they were particularly going for, aside if we're in an endless cycle where just products are shoved in our face.
Yeah. I think it's something like that.
That works. The idea of the multiple twists, though, like generally, so you have everyone die in an explosion. They're reborn as robots, but miniature robots in a town.
And a simulation of their old town.
So
why do they have to be miniature robots?
A tabletop, because it's so much cheaper. That's why
it's cheaper, man. Yeah. He said it at the end. He's an ad man. Yeah. He's all about making.
It's cheaper, but it still costs him millions of dollars.
Sure.
Yeah, but
it could have cost billions of dollars.
Less than having the actual town is all. So go ahead.
So I don't know. I liked the story. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know if. I think that in a sense, the point he was making was lost in a sense, all these twists at the end.
Well, yeah, like so, I feel like following the main character try to figure out what exactly was going on took more away from the story than it had just the advertisements because they were just, I don't know, not really like after. I think the only big part of the story that I felt that the advertising really hit was when that truck showed up and just started blaring Freezy Pop,
Yeah.
Freezy Pop, Freezy
Sure.
Pop.
Which I think was kind of, I thought that part was kind of brilliant.
It was effective at the time.
And like,
I'll say.
I thought it was a really good, because not specifically that part, but when they talk about it later, and they're like, yeah, that
People didn't
that
like it.
worked the best. However,
Yeah.
like we can't do that
There's
in
so
real
many
life.
downsides to it
Yeah.
that it won't work in real life.
Exactly.
Sure.
And then they later sold the same product with sex and apologies.
Yeah.
And,
But I think that was part of the same cell.
uh,
To me, in my mind, that was part of the same cell, right?
Mm.
It's like you annoy the shit out of them first, and then you bring in a sexy lady or a sexy man to come and sell it later, and both worked,
Yeah.
right? So they had the
Sure.
highest percentage of sales with that.
Right. They're taking notes. They're taking marketing notes, of
Yeah.
course.
It's just like when was the story written?
I believe like late 40s. I don't have the year on hand. Sorry.
Okay, I guess people were a lot
Late
polite.
40s,
I guess
50-ish.
people were a lot politer back then.
Yeah.
But I would not have waited to call the cops.
Sure, it has almost like a Zero Rust sort of feel to it, as I said. But this is going to sound like a negative thing, but and I've mentioned this before in a lot of Matsu is that at the end of the day, it almost feels like a secondhand Philip K. Dick story. And in fact, Philip K. Dick wrote a pretty similar story about advertising and parodying in general. And given the fact that, yes, as you said about the extraneous twist, if you will, it does lessen it a bit. But I still think I like it as a parody on that. I think the theme of that stands well enough that I will give it a solid 1.
I would agree with that. I think that the twist notwithstanding,
Yeah.
the theme of the consumerism theme and also I wanted to mention this. This reminded me of a story we did earlier, The Hanging Man by Philip K. Dick, a little bit because of the way that the main character felt so out of place and like something was definitely wrong, but they couldn't put their finger on it. And I thought that it did that well as well.
the Hanging Man, if memory serves me correctly, was did the uncanniness because it was kind of a pseudo Red Scare type thing.
Analogy.
Which this isn't doing that. It's more of like we're trapped in like a hamster habitat, being sold things. And again, I think it was done well. I just think that it could have been more concise to really drive the theme. So I'm going to give it a 0.
I got you. That's fair. What do you think, Rich? Where do you come down?
I agree with Ian. I think they could have did more to
All right.
really bring the themes across.
That's fair. It was close, kind of, but I think like I said, I'll end up with a 1. But I could see you.
I think I'm going to give it a 1 too. I liked what they did with the themes. Yes, at certain points, especially at the end, it got a little bogged down. But I liked
solid.
kind of what they did, what Pohl did with it early on, and I think that carried through for me.
All right, fair enough. Well, that will bring you, Steve-O, with Antagonist.
All right, and I'm just going to pause for a moment to give us a shout out on these brand new TLS glasses.
I would never sell out.
And we're talking about antagonists. So I guess, give me a moment here. I guess the antagonist is going to be kind of the ad man, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the idea of these guys who are willing to do anything to sell a product, including taking the memories of people who died in a massive
power plant meltdown.
Yeah, power
gas
plant explosion.
I guess. Yeah.
or whatever.
I feel like there would still be laws against that.
And there should have been. But this was the 40s, remember? There weren't many laws against anything.
And in the future of corporatocracy, there might not be any again.
And
anyway,
and I thought that it was what was the guy's name? The guy that ran the guy that ran the whole town. Duchamp? Yeah. I thought that he was well personified at the end. I liked his character and his like kind of Weasleyness, like running away and coming back and saying, "Hey, I'm the puppet master," that type of thing. Wasn't the strongest antagonist in the world or anything, but I enjoyed it for what it was.
So, what I like about the antagonist is you're given two faces of this literally faceless organization. You have, actually, I would say 3. One, you have the giant hand at the end of the
Sure.
corporate overlord. That,
But that's Duchamp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the real life
Right.
You have
versus his
you have
robot
the robot.
simulacrum.
You have, I guess, two robot Duchamps.
Mhm.
One which is expensive and done to make him look like a person, and the other is just a steel robot. And then the other one is, I know her name's not Audrey Horne because that's from Twin Peaks, but I'm going to call her that.
April Horn.
April Horne.
April
whatever.
Horne. Close enough.
Audrey
Maybe that's where they got
Horne's
Audrey Horne from.
Yeah.
Who is a very interesting case because she's, in a sense, a sales girl for the and she volunteered to be in this situation, but she gave up her humanity in order to, like, she was old, she was
To live
like
longer.
dying, and she could even mentioned that she felt that she was ugly.
Sure.
So she's given a new life under this perfect kind of
Robot veneer body, yes.
Yeah.
It's an interesting parallel to, or later on, I don't know, you've read Old Man's War, right, Scott?
Yes.
Old Man's War is an interesting parallel to this, I
Sure.
guess, to a
Give it a
small
shout-out.
extent. But it's kind of this idea of, like, if you're old, you can just have a new life as a robot. You
Sure.
know, like
That's,
you put your
that's its own form of advertisement
Yeah.
as well.
But I want to ask you a question. Like, you think she's part of the antagonist?
I think that if you're considering the ad men,
She
As-
literally sold her soul, though.
yes.
I
And I
see.
think-
but she's kind of like brought in under their
That's what I'm saying.
banner. She's not
Like,
necessarily
she
like
actively working against them.
yeah. She kind of just wants to live.
In a way, she
Can I
is,
live?
If you consider the fact that they have to live every single day, she is aware of this. She recognizes these people. Her memory is not wiped.
Sure.
She
yeah, true.
she is complacent in this cyclical hell that they exist in. If you so want to consider it that, and I think that they all have like interesting qualities to this faceless bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Different aspects of it, and I don't know if they worked particularly well, like theme wise, but I think that there's a lot there that could have been built upon, and so I'm going to give them a 1 just on that.
All right. I think I'm gonna say that I counted her as a secondary character, which I think I still will. Although I understand what you're saying. So again, it's my old conundrum: should I give abstract items more credit, or like as personified by the characters who represent those abstract entities, if you will, themselves? I think I like the idea of like sort of a nightmarish hell of advertising that people are unwillingly conscripted to be subjected to, and in a model like a model train setup essentially. So I like that, and Duchamp was like fine. He gave like I guess it's a perfectly villainous speech as
Right.
we've seen before.
Oh, that felt so tacked on, though.
That's-
Because
but that's what I'm saying, like-
before that, he's just like an exasperated employee.
Yeah, and then he comes like, I'm actually the puppet master. Like, I get that. So that's why I'm sort of wavering. But I think I'll give, again, the idea, like, the absurd comment upon, like, if you run consumerism and, free market to its, like, utmost extent, it's, the nightmarish version of something like this. So I think I'll give that a 1. And given that I'm going to ship April or Audrey, whatever, Horn, Hope, into secondary, I think antagonist is going to a solid 1 from me.
Oh, advertising as an antagonist? Definitely a 1.
I think
That's my argument.
I almost called her Audrey. I think April
Sure.
is a secondary character. I think that's, for me, that's what she's going to be. But I will say that it's kind of a mixture for me, Scott. And
Sure.
you know how I like to talk shit about this.
I understand.
But I think
give you
that
shit over
the overarching like ad man group, whatever, as personified by Duchamp, is effective as as an antagonist.
Yeah.
In a much different way that I may not give protagonist a 1, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a 0, or I'm gonna give it a 1 for antagonist.
Okay.
And that's it.
Anything else? All right. So speaking of that, we'll move on, which brings me to protagonist. So you sort of preempted me a bit. I think I'm leaning towards a 0, like outright. I'll say that. Brookhart was fine, but of course, like again, we discussed this a lot. In a story of this nature, he's basically your blank slate window into like your everyman, like the only sane man left, or vice versa. Sure, that means he has to be like kind of flat in order for you to follow along with him. As Ian was saying, yes, it's nice that you're figuring out things as he is. You're not like sort of figuring out the mystery before the character does. But that means that he sort of has to just be like window dressing kind of in service to everything else. So, and like it also goes to dialogue, which we'll speak about in a bit, and sort of like a commons problem. It wasn't all that memorable, and the things he was saying, like the plot around him, and as we just said, is more interesting than him himself as portrayed. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. If anybody disagrees or has something else to say,
I'll add on to that a little bit. I think that before you get to the upshot of the whole story, as I was talking about earlier, where it's similar to the Hanging Man, right? If I recall correctly, I think I gave the protagonist in the Hanging Man a 1 because I liked his character, in that he does kind of the same type of
like
things.
I said, it's very similar
in this story.
Sure,
I thought this protagonist was less interesting.
I agree,
and didn't have quite so many interesting things to say about the world, that this world that is like completely, at the same time, completely familiar but completely alien,
the uncanny
as
experience.
well. And I think that Pohl would have done well to dive a little bit more into his
maybe some nuance to hear.
Into what he thought was going on.
No, I agree. I don't have much more to add. That's basically my exact thoughts.
Yes, I liked the character, and I thought he had, well, again, for a short story, had decent character development, especially early on before he fully recognizes. And his conversations with Swanson, you come to acknowledge that he was the one who originally recognized that something isn't right, and that he got caught. Sure. And got kind of brainwashed again, and now he's relearning what
he's rediscovering these conspiracy he himself.
And I imagine that even though the ending kind of suggests that he never realized again, I do kind of imagine him occasionally having to go through this.
I like to think that too, especially when April said it's Burkhart again.
Like,
I feel like
he's just a troublemaker.
Yeah, it's just like a spanner in the works. It's just like becomes self-aware every once in a while, every few cycles.
Yeah, it's a Westworld thing, like I said, but I just don't think there's enough there that it's going to get a 0, probably soft 0 from me.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think I agree with you, Scott.
I'm giving it a 1 for protagonist.
I'll give him a 1 because I'm figuring in a few cycles it's going to be a lot more interesting story.
Well, yeah, if you get to read that story, but the story we have is the story we got, so I'm just saying.
Hey, maybe I'll write it.
Isn't quite. Right, you should. Well, that will bring you to secondary characters, Rich.
And let's see. So we got Swanson, April, and we kind of shown as a secondary.
Half and half.
I count him as antagonist, but you can count him as whatever you want.
I guess we could do
Given that I didn't count him as
Mrs. Burkhart.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Madam Burkhart.
Mary, I think, or something was her name, maybe.
I don't know why I called her Madam.
Burkhart's wife, that is.
They were exposition pieces mostly. More Mary, not so much, but if that is her name, I'm just kind of taking off of your...
Yeah.
But like
it's a very generic 50s wife name, I'm sorry. The best way I can describe it.
More or less, they were exposition pieces to help provide backstory for what was going on. And in doing that, they served their part. Were they interesting? I guess April was way more interesting than Swanson.
Exactly.
Like her whole reason for doing these things was very human. And I do like the bit that she used Burkhart's impending reset as a chance to, like, I guess use him as a psychologist almost, or psychiatrist, where like she just talks out her problems, like, oh, I've always had self-esteem issues, and I've just decided to give my life up to this company. If that's weird or anything, I mean, you can judge me if you want, but
I love the idea that there might have been something real in that what she was saying. Like, I didn't even think of it that way, but that's awesome.
No, I sort of took it that way. But like I said, so I largely agree again with that I think she's one of the most interesting secondary characters, which I'm counting her as. Swanson was like, okay, like it almost reminded me of Dark City. I think one of you brought up Dark City precast about the story, that he's like the guy who, like, the original detective who figured out and got insane, but not really. Actually, it's Burkhart who told him first, but then he got so like it's sort of like a weird, like, winding cycle.
But this guy had no spine. They're just like living in these tunnels for weeks.
Yeah, because he didn't know what else to do because he didn't figure it out.
It's like I need him to come back and tell me what to do.
Burkhart is the one who figured it out.
I'll say that's kind of why I like the character. Like, it was just this very
squirrely,
strange.
He's Ratso.
He was just like he.
Jeez, go on.
He existed literally just to be not a foil, but like
He's
know,
like a
just,
catalyst.
just to
I get it.
just to
Wake,
But, like,
help this character.
I
right?
love this
But-
idea of him just like popping up once a day
Yeah.
to like try to get like, hey, and like staring at him, trying to see nothing, and just like running off to go hide.
I kind of
Like,
like that
background.
character for that reason. He's like, hey, oh, nothing today. Anyway, I've got to go.
No,
We
you're
got back
right.
to my
I thought that
closet.
was amusing, but good.
Damn it, he's getting a 1 from me now.
Yeah.
So I don't count April as a secondary
Right.
character, and you might have just actually convinced me on Swanson. But I really like the secretary, although she's a very small part.
Yeah.
She literally spends every single her entire eternity hating her job,
Slacking
and
off.
just being sarcastic. to
Yeah.
people. And that is a good.
Fair enough. No, I do like the Swanson thing. That I probably was going to give it a 1, like just because the way I cut up the characters. But I think you convinced me Swanson was more effective, more perhaps better drawn than I thought he was at first. So I'm going to give him a solid 1 overall.
Especially how quickly he folds once he finds out he's a robot.
Yeah, that's the best. like that's
Fuck this guy. I want to work for you.
I want to see characters like that they're just like, oh, this is what would really happen in real life if this was the case. Like,
Sure.
just be like, I'm just gonna go along with the flow.
Sure.
It's like, work for me. Like, there's no position for you. Get out of here.
Yeah.
It's like, you're
I'll
not
do
going
whatever.
No, you can't work for me.
Yeah.
All right, well then reset my mind, please. Just do it as fast as
Are
possible.
he's like, are you going to punish me? How? How can I punish you?
Yeah, you're at max punishment right now. That's the most you can be
Yeah,
punished.
you're right. The more you mention that, the more I think about it, I think you're right. But so it's stronger than I thought. But I'm definitely giving it a 1 at the end of the day, anyways.
Richie convinced me to give it a 1.
So one's all around.
All right.
Yeah.
Very nice.
All right.
And that will also bring us to dialogue with the.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's kind of an easy.
there's
Go ahead.
I think a couple good points in this, but the thing I remember is the occasional exposition dumps,
Hmm.
and that's the only thing I remember from dialogue. Like wishing it was handled better at certain areas.
Well,
so
here's what I'll say. The thing I remember is, of course, the ads, if you indeed count that as dialogue.
Hated them.
So, like, yeah, of course.
But you're supposed to hate them.
Yeah, because they're so, like, generically, like, a parody.
No. They're not even
Yeah.
generic.
A template, like, they're an absurd version of, like, something you recognize from your life. So, yeah, of course, it's, like, annoyingly horrifying because you're bombarded with them a lot. But I think my initial gut reaction was to basically be what you said, that it's there, it's okay. It's not the point of the story, the theme, like everything we just said is basically the point. So yes, it's like work, like, hey, hello, doing, or again, Swanson come up like, hey, anything? Nope, okay. Like
That was my favorite parts of dialogue of the entire
and
story.
the dialogue was not interesting. It's just like you understood the implications of
all
it.
I'm picturing
Yeah.
now is just him like doing one of these and
Just, like, looking around, like-
Yeah. He like Scooby Doo's.
All right, I gotta go.
out of view. So like, yeah, I think I'm gonna give it. Unless anyone really convinces me, I think I'm leaning towards a solid
Oh, I
0.
can't convince you anything. I'm definitely giving.
I'm
it
not.
a 0.
Yeah, I'm not trying to convince
Like,
you of
like,
anything.
Like
It was-
Ian said, like the only thing I really remember is the exposition. Any dialogue that he had with his wife,
Yeah,
which I
it's
love
white
how
noise.
I love how the author like set her up as like this character that we shouldn't really pay much attention to right off the bat. And he's
basically
like,
just said that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Not,
So
with-
she's
in
not like one of
so
those
many
other
words.
women who's as tough as a man and
yeah. Maybe again, I remember that line.
interesting in any way.
Yeah, maybe that's a sign of the times. I do remember that line. You're like, I was like, all right then.
Yeah,
She tries.
it's
her
weird
best.
being the third sentence of this story.
Yeah.
I don't know why you did that.
Yeah,
But
it's a nice
Pay no attention
description,
to her.
I feel kind of the same way. The dialogue was lackluster at best.
Mm.
The best part of it was Swanson muttering under his breath, and I guess the ads were somewhat, at least, interesting. Like they kind of provided a little thing to like look back at the end of the story
Sure,
and like
exactly.
see how they worked. But I don't think they saved the dialogue.
I also consider a lot of the ad style.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna
And, yeah, I
speak
was
to that
waiting
in
to get to
style
that.
as well.
But if not there, I'll mention here that again, in Phil K. Dick's novel Ubik, each chapter starts off with like a parody of an ad, which I thought was better than
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
So anyway, I think I'm going to give it a pretty solid 0 for dialogue. I think we're all pretty much doing that. It seems.
Yep.
All right. Well, speaking of that, then Steve-O, you're on to style.
Oh, it's me. I enjoyed the style of this. In fact, I think that the style was the thing that made me like this story more than anything else. The plot was good. The themes were interesting, but nothing was there other than that this was a well written and kind of well crafted,
well executed, I'll say.
Story of style. Like, the idea that the advertising kept coming up, that it really was. It was pretty well paced throughout. Yep. Like, I think there were like 32 chapters in this, which are like a paragraph and a half long each or whatever. But they each had their own point to them, and I thought they were well divided. I thought that it was just well written, and sorry for that.
Make a noise. Stop it.
I thought it was well divided, and I thought that the writing was pretty well done in terms of making this something that was its own. Like, you said this was written in like the 40s, and it didn't feel like a story that I'd necessarily read before, other than perhaps a couple like Philip K. Dick short stories or something like that. But like in that they were similar to Philip K. Dick stories, that gives more style points. No,
I agree. I don't really have much more to add. I think it was solid, as you said. I enjoyed it throughout. It wasn't fancy, but it served its point perfectly. It was easy to follow. It was very nice, and the pacing point is very good. Call. I agree with that. So
just to add on to that, they do a wonderful job of, as mentioned before, the uncanny effect that they pepper with very obtrusive advertising, and so it like kind of
it's
breaks
jarring
the
a bit,
tension.
but
And then starts rebuilding it again.
I absolutely should have said that. Yeah.
Yep. No,
you're absolutely right, Ian.
All those points. I think
the uncanniness of this story was obvious right away, and it was well done throughout, I think.
Yep. Got anything to add, Rich? Anybody else?
I'm gonna give it a 1.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. Like you said, like the uncanniness it takes you out. Like, it doesn't really take you out of the story because the protagonist is taken out of the story along with you.
Yeah.
So, like, the fact that he shares that kind of keeps me involved.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, yeah, solid ones from everybody, pretty much on style.
Solid ones.
All right, so it comes to me for a recommendation. Technically, I guess I did, but again, so normally what we do for MOTS do is that we pick a story, like at least one of us has read. So, like, we're like, hey, you guys would enjoy this one. I've read it before. That's not always the case. In this case, I decided to look up, I don't have the website on hand, but like top well-known or very well-done sci-fi stories that aren't like the biggest ones you ever heard. Like there was no Arthur C. Clarke on this list. Right. Like things like that. No Isaac Asimov. But like sort of second tier, like decent secondary tier things that like, if not forgotten, just didn't make it to the top of the top. So that's where I found this one, and a synopsis of something like a parody on consumerism. I was like, oh, that sounds neat. Like we're sort of all into that. So I decided to do it, and yeah, now having found it sort of somewhat randomly and having read it, I think I would recommend it. I think it stands its place as a solid, perhaps, given it was written, like I said, late 40s, maybe early 50s. Again, not the exact year, but roughly around then. I think I can see its influence or like things like it, and I would say, hey, yeah, give it a read. You'll probably enjoy it, and it goes pretty quick.
I feel like it definitely holds up, at least for nowadays, with the pop-up ads that we get online constantly.
It's like the 50s version of it.
Yeah. Like, I think if you got some time to kill, it's definitely worth it. I was a little hesitant in the beginning, but like it caught my attention and like kept me with it, wanting to figure out what was going on.
Exactly. That's well said. It's pretty much what I would say.
I mean, haven't we all felt like tiny robots in a tiny town?
So I certainly do.
I would actually strongly recommend this. I thought it was well done, and it does keep up for the modern day sensibilities, and it's worth the half hour take to read, whatever.
I think I strongly recommend this too. It's not going to be our anywhere near our highest score ever, but as we've said several times today, if you like a Philip K. Dick sensibility to your short stories, or like Twilight Zone or Outer Limits or something like that,
maybe some Black Mirror.
You'll really like this story, and it's something that you can look at as kind of a forerunner to a lot of the stuff that has happened since. I mean, I would say read it. It's not going to take you more than half an hour probably to read. maybe a little bit longer, but not too much.
Depending, but either way.
And it's just a fun read.
Yep. So I think that'll be the final scores. Ian will give us the breakdown.
All right. Well, this turned out to be pleasant. We all gave it 7s
For different reasons.
for different reasons. So that's a 7 overall.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty fucking spot on, really.
Yeah.
I think it hit the advertising number, if you will. the market share stands.
Yeah, they might on next try. They might do better on dialogue.
Yeah.
But
we'll have to run this podcast simulation again and see if we can do better. But I think that'll do it for this particular iteration. That we've been talking about The Tunnel Under the World by Frederik Pohl. I've been Scott Thurlow, here with Rich Perry.
Happy June 15th.
Jane Manzer.
Happy June 15th.
Stephen Amosi.
happy tomorrow, June 15th.
Mm-hmm. And we'll see you next time on Matsadu. Good night.
Matsadu About Nothing.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Hermosi.
Matsadu About Nothing.
Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.